December 10th, this is the meeting of the Neshoba High School Space Needs Task Force. Starting with our agenda, we're going to begin with approving minutes, but I haven't been able to come up with any copies of minutes. So I think we're going to just jump over that item in the agenda. The next thing is to vote a recommendation to the school committee on a choice of vendor for the Neshoba Regional High School Enrollment Forecast. Bill, you want to carry that discussion?
Sure. So as everyone knows, we went out to request for proposals. We originally went out to bid. Proposals came in our first round. We were a little over-specified, and we went back as a subcommittee, well, Bob, Mark, and myself, and we revised the scope and the specifications, and we went back out to bid, and from that we were able to return another four proposals. From those four proposals, we whittled that down to two in our subcommittee. From those two, we had conference calls last week with the two remaining vendors, and we further whittled that down to the one, which the recommendation we were looking at moving forward was for NESDEC.
Right.
And they had a total cost of $8,740 for the proposal.
What does NESDEC stand for, please?
NESDEC is the New England School Development Council.
And they're the ones who came and gave us a presentation at some point.
Right, they did. They came in on a different format. They talked about because we work with them already, and we have an agreement where we do get some demographic studies. This is a more in-depth study.
NESDEC has its offices in Marlboro, and they do all kinds of enrollment projections and studies and stuff like that for...
Is that the ones that have been working with the administration previously?
Yes, we have a subscription. The Neshoba Regional School District has a subscription to their enrollment forecast. Basically, that subscription is go look at the history of how many students there have been, and they do what they call a cohort study and use that information to project out what your enrollment is going to be in the future. That's the subscription. The difference between the study and the subscription will be that they will come in, they will talk with town officials, they'll talk with real estate people if we designate that, they'll talk with developers if we ask them to, they'll talk with the town planners, and try to get a better idea of what are the unique conditions in each town that affect enrollment. We asked them for enrollment of the elementary schools as well as the high schools. The elementary schools individually as well as the high school.
The feeders, so you might as well.
Right, right. Sure. And they're going to be, it's all the same information anyway, so, you know, you can roll it all out. You know, the other vendors that we had, I don't know, do you want to say more about how we differentiated that?
Right, so there were four vendors. One of them was a vendor located out of New York City, large architectural firm that does, the scope that they were providing to us was just well beyond what we needed, and you could see that they're a very specialty firm, and their quotation to us was about 4 to 5 times higher than all of the other vendors. So it was apples and oranges. So we ruled them out fairly quickly. The second one was a company, DeJean Richter, out of, I believe it was Ohio. So they were an Ohio firm, and they did have an impressive proposal. It was close price-wise. I think they were a little more expensive by a couple $100, but they were right in the ballpark. But speaking with them when we did our conference call, the feedback we got back was they were expecting us to provide them with all the information, and then they have a software that they chug it all in, and it spits out a report. So we were really spending this money for the use of their software, but we had to provide all the data. When we asked them if they spoke with any local representatives, planning boards, town managers, real estate agents, they said no. That's not something they do. If they want to, if we'd like them to, they can for an additional charge. So we took that proposal off the table. That left us down with NESDEC and MAPC. MAPC is one of the places that is the data warehouse where NESDEC and a lot of these other companies pull their information from. Speaking with MAPC, they expressed an interest of jumping into this pool and creating this. But unlike NESDEC and unlike DeJean Richter and WXY, they didn't have a software or a format, so they were developing it as they went. So we were gonna be
Guinea pig.
the guinea pig. Right, and their information was probably gonna be sound, everything would be there, but their cost was much more expensive than the other companies. So we spoke with them a little bit, asked them if maybe they would like to, you know, take that cost out of it and do this as a, you know, way to build their business or build their model. Didn't seem like it was an interest to them. We didn't get a whole lot of response back after that. So we wound up working with NESDEC. We went to the NESDEC proposal. From there, Bob's has a contact with the town planning department in Hopkinton. Was it
Hopkinton.
Hopkinton, right. And part of our process with NESDEC, we asked them to send us some similar proposals they sent to other similar type communities. We got a Bellingham, Hopkinton, and Quabbin. And we read through these, they were impressive, they were all a little different, and they all, you know, I think there's pieces of each one of these that we'd like to pull out and ask NESDEC to provide to us. But we were able to speak with Elaine over in Hopkinton, who was in the town planning department, who worked with NESDEC on their enrollment projections that they did. And this was for, I think, a pre-K through 1. Yeah, pre-K through 1 school they were building, when they were looking at the same kind of thoughts as us. Do we remodel? Do we tear down and build new? They ended up building new. And they asked for this report from NESDEC. She gave us, I thought, some great feedback, because they weren't, the first round they got back from NESDEC, they weren't happy with. They didn't like the way their reporting came back, because they felt like they didn't put enough emphasis into their high growth that they were having in the town. They have a huge community, a huge project that they were building that was, they've already, 1,000 housing units.
Oh my.
So it was huge, but NESDEC did not look at that the way they've already created, they already worked with the developer, and they had a town agreement with the developer to issue the permits and move forward. So to them, it was money in the bank. I mean, these people were coming in, these houses were being built. NESDEC's model did not encompass that, and they wouldn't do that. So they asked them for another round, and she was very good. She said, although we didn't agree, NESDEC did a nice job with coming back with a higher range, taking some of our information in. But again, NESDEC kind of dug their heels in a little and said, well, we're not going to give you everything. We're not going to put all that in there, because we still don't agree with everything you're asking for. She said, so they took the NESDEC data and they kind of added on their own information to it to get the numbers they wanted to predict what they felt was right for the school. But she said they had a good experience working with NESDEC, and she recommended them. She said, you know, I mean, there was a few things there, hiccups, but they were able to work together with it. And NESDEC said, we understand your needs.
Yeah.
They understood what NESDEC was coming from, so it seemed like it was a positive experience for Hopkinton. So from there, we looked at, with these information we have from these different proposals and with our contacts there and what we've learned from these different these different interviews, that NESDEC should be the company that we move forward to the school committee.
Was there an absolute dollar bill, or is it negotiable depending on final details?
This was the 80, speaking with NESDEC, we had the total price of $8,740, and that creates our proposal, and it's a little loose, yes.
I'm just gonna say, we're looking at NESDEC as a company for our superintendent search, and their price to us included a 20% discount because we're a member. Did they give us a discount?
It does. The original
Okay.
price was $10,925 less the 20% NESDEC affiliate discount. So that gave us the $8,740.
Okay. Then
So,
the other question I have is, and Mark, you might know because you've been on this committee and now are on the school committee. Did we encumber any monies in anticipation of this? And if not, where do we anticipate, when would this money need to be spent? And where,
Where's it come
would
from?
the school committee anticipate this coming from? What pocket?
It would be out of the fiscal 16, this fiscal year money. And
Yes.
it's, I've been given to understand there's enough slack in the budget so that money can be found to do that.
But is there a particular line item?
There's no particular line
this-
item.
But isn't it important to identify where it would come out of? I'd hate to give
It
you.
will come out of some particular line item and probably will be asked to transfer
Because
money
I
as
was
time
under
passes.
the impression that there's very little slack and we run a tight ship.
That would be not quite correct.
Oh dear. Okay, but I think it's important that we identify where it is so it doesn't look like we're rolling in it, so to speak, because I know we're not.
That's an old impression that is also incorrect.
Mr. Jones, I should have talked to you before we got here. Okay, so it's coming out of FY15, but
Yeah.
we know that we have the
16.
fund, 16, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
But we know that we can cover this expense, but it has not been encumbered.
correct.
Well, let me make one thing clear here. What we're proposing tonight, we have always told the school committee that they ultimately have to agree to do this.
Exactly, no, I get
Okay,
it.
so
Yeah,
we're just voting tonight whether or not to recommend
Right,
this to the school committee. We're not authorized to actually execute a contract.
I know that, but I
Okay.
know that that's gonna be a question that may come up either
Okay.
from the school committee itself or from the public. So it's good to be prepared.
I would anticipate that, having heard this, that somebody in the administration will identify a source in anticipation of that question.
And I can talk to George to give him a heads up
Yeah.
and make sure that, you know, he's thinking, I know he is already, because I've already spoke with him, so.
Mhm.
For comparison
he's-
purposes, Bill, what was the previous bid, the low bid of what was we previously rejected?
The
That contract?
MAPEC came in at, and I think this is all in there, MAPEC came in at just over $10,000. WXY came in at $40,000.
Over 10? Let me see the MAPC.
I thought it was, yeah, I
thought it
thought
was a lot
maybe it was
more.
18.
What was, I'm sorry, maybe double check it.
But I think Don was asking.
I'm sorry, you're right, total cost, $18,400.
For the last round.
For the last round.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So 18.4, and then DeJong Richter, off the top of my head, came in, I think they were about, they were very close, it was like $8,500.
Yeah, they were within a few hundred.
They were within a
dollars
few
in
$100s of here, but
They
when
may
we
even
talked to
have been
them,
cheap. Were they cheaper than
I
this?
think, like I said, I think they were like $200 cheaper, but
Yeah.
when we spoke to them, they weren't giving us the same
Service.
service.
If I might, just at this juncture, make a comment which may be applicable to a lot of what we may be talking about tonight. I mentioned to Bob before the meeting was convened. I apologize for not having been here last couple of months. I had knee surgery for the second time on the same knee, mid-September. And I, between pain pills and not being able to drive and crutches and whatever, I was not able to get around for a substantial period of time. And then subsequently, there have been at least one and maybe two meetings of this organization, or meetings where you failed to get a quorum, when I couldn't make it because there were conflicts with my board of selectmen in Stowe. So if I'm asking questions, it's not, I apologize
No, that's
for
fine.
coming late to the final dance of the prom.
Don, this has been a much longer process than we expected, and it's good to cover everything all over again, just so everyone's got a full perspective.
So that may, if people are saying, why is he asking this at that particular point, that's why. So keep that in mind as we go along. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or points of discussion about the enrollment study?
DeJong Richter was $8,500.
Okay.
So I was stuck to the back of one of the proposals.
Okay. Would anybody like to move that the task force recommend the choice of NESDEC to the school committee for the enrollment forecast?
So moved.
Second.
All right, hold on, I just realized we don't have a secretary.
When I heard you say before, we don't have minutes.
So, I guess I'm the secretary.
What's that?
Well, it's been more or less.
Can you?
Yes,
can you-
the one that
Okay,
Michael put out.
So
so,
what was the motion?
the motion was for the task force to recommend to the school committee, NESDEC as the vendor of choice for the high school enrollment forecast, for the
Pursuant to their,
enrollment forecast.
pursuant to their bid, if I might, dated such and such.
Sure, pursuant to their bid.
Here, October
And,
20th, 2015.
10/28/15.
David made the motion and Don seconded.
I apologize for being late. Could you give me like a 10-second summary of?
Okay. We're talking about the NESDEC
Yep.
forecast, or we're talking about the enrollment forecast. We sent out a second round of an RFP. We got 4 responses, one of which was above $40,000, one of which was the low bid was they expected us to provide all of the information for them. And then the other 2 bids were separated by about $10,000, which leaves us with NESDEC, who we had discussions with. We also had a conference call with someone who recently worked with NESDEC on their enrollment forecast and got good feedback from them. So the upshot is that as a subcommittee, Mark, Bill and I are recommending that we go ahead with NESDEC for this enrollment forecast.
And what was the price quote?
8740.
87.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
what was convincing for me, enough to make me jump in and second it, was particularly that this bid alone, I guess, includes interviewing all the local officials, realtors, everybody else, to not just take canned data and massage it. So there's a lot, I think that will be of a lot more value.
Right.
Are these examples of?
Data proposal, that was 10/28/2015.
This is examples of work that they've done?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Do we move to a vote? All those in favor of the motion to recommend NESDEC as the vendor for this, to the school committee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next on the agenda is a recommendation to the school committee as to whether or not to proceed with a statement of interest with MSBA when invitations open in January. I'm not sure how to, the second part of that is that at the last meeting, I was asked to, assuming that there was a recommendation to prepare a presentation for the school committee for this group to review. So I've got a presentation, a draft of a presentation to the school committee that we could review. But I don't know if it's worth going over that before we actually vote on the motion, or if that
It
will.
would be helpful to me to
Help.
at least look at it to see.
Okay.
I agree.
No,
Yeah.
where I was going,
It
what I
is
was gonna say was,
a nice
would
review.
looking at the presentation help with the discussion?
It would help me.
Or would it bog it down?
Comments anyway.
We've been at this for 2 years, so I think that having it wrapped up into a,
All right, now this would not be the final report of the committee. This presentation is strictly around a recommendation. It's oriented on behalf of going forward with a statement of interest. Oh, you have one?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So, let me walk you through it. The first, oh, I see. When you flip it over,
Mhm.
then it's right side up. Okay. So, again, this is addressed to the school committee, and I start off by saying that on December 10th, the High School Space Needs Task Force considered a motion recommending that the school district, school committee authorize the superintendent to submit a statement of interest to the MSBA when invitations are accepted in 2016 for the purpose of improving the high school. And then I go down to say, why did the task force make this motion? Why are we doing it now? What else is the task force doing in the meantime, and what remains for us to do? I go down to the next slide, and it's been 2 years since we first started meeting, December of 2013. We issued interim reports on March 5th and April 30th of this year. We're now working on a final report. And the final report sets priorities for physical plant issues at the high school. I want to set the expectations of the school committee and let them know that we're evaluating space needs, but we're not going to recommend solutions to those problems. And we're voting on this proposal before the final report in order to give the school committee time to have some discussion about a statement of interest before they actually make a decision. So I'm decoupling. Originally, I had hoped to make this part of the final report, but I think time says we have to make this move now. I don't know if anybody's got any issues or questions about that.
I may at some
Okay.
point, but maybe this is not the time, maybe after we go through it.
So a statement of interest it costs nothing except the clerical and administrative time to submit it, to write it and submit it.
Let me just clarify, my question comes up with, does not consider or recommend solutions to space needs problems. I thought that was our raison d'etre. I mean, now, I go back to my earlier disqualifying comments of not
Yeah.
having been here. So can somebody fill me in with, where did we switch from, let's figure out what, all of these things we've identified, what's our proposed solution to the school committee before they consider an SOI, versus now, we're not. Does that charge the committee?
Well, it's a fair question. I was under the impression that we were here to evaluate space needs, and we never had a budget to
Understand.
do the engineering studies or anything else in order to find a solution.
Even without that, just in broad brush strokes, I guess I was thinking, at some point, there might be, a agreement by this committee, we're gonna say, at one end, build a new high school, at the other end, do nothing except cosmetics. But that there will be some kind of solution coming out of this committee.
So in my mind, in 2 years of doing this stuff in the committee and all kinds of meetings, it's always been quite clear to me, after numerous discussions, that we weren't providing solutions, we're providing needs. So we're identifying things that need to be improved on and kind of trying to prioritize them and kind of what have you, but that we did not have the resources necessary, whether it's structural, architectural, kind of whatever, to even start with coming up with what might be the best solution to do it. We kind of know maybe big picture what big picture options might be, but how much that would cost or how, any of those things kind of, in my mind, has been clearly off the table for this committee since the very inception 2 years ago.
Yeah, I on the one hand, I don't think anybody's keen on the idea of building a new school. On the other hand, the extent of renovation or how to renovate, I feel is beyond this committee.
Doesn't the MSBA, you could send your statement of interest and they look at what you propose, and it's been a long time since I had to deal with this, but I'm somewhere in the back of my mind it is that they give you their recommendation.
Right.
For example, is that what they do, Maureen?
That was the impression that we've gotten.
Yeah.
For example, when Ellen Sturgis met with us,
Yeah.
and just different things that Michael said at different meetings, that we identified the need and justify why we need to do something, but the MSBA is going to have a lot of say in terms of telling you
Right. But
how
Don's-
what they will do when they partner with you.
Don's question is more, why is this committee not even going to put forth some conceptual.
Okay, I heard that, maybe not only did I come late now, but I was not at the ground floor the way some of you
Okay.
folks were. But I still suffer from a misapprehension, I guess. But at least that's, when I've been here, that's kind of what I'm thinking. We identify all of this sort of stuff, and that the school committee members might disabuse me of this. But I believe that the school committee was looking to us to say, what's your recommendation to how to fix this? Not anticipating engineering drawings or anything that's clearly beyond our capability, but just as a general overview. We've spent more time looking at this, you folks collectively, than the school committee has had a chance to do. That's why this was created. So
Right.
if I was on the school committee, I guess I would have thought this group would come back with, we can't tell you the shape of it, whether it's red brick or white brick or whatever else, but we recommend that you do X as a solution.
I mean, I think we've identified, I think in the deficiency area, we've identified things that would lead into solutions. You know, given X population, we would need X number of additional classrooms. In terms of quality of educational space, here are the areas that seem to be most important to look at. But my understanding of the process is that it would be presumptuous and probably an empty step on our part to say, we recommend you do this, because even at the point of submitting an SOI, I don't think the school committee is saying, we think we need to do this. They're just saying, look, we've identified deficiencies. Now we want to work with you to figure out what the solutions would be. So I guess my sense is that us saying we think we should do this wouldn't really matter, because that's not the way the process works, and to a certain extent also could then detract from the focus on, okay, here are the deficiencies. I mean, the moment that we say, oh, we think we should do a major renovation, I think that becomes the topic of discussion rather than what are we trying to accomplish, what's the issue. That's my
And
perception.
my understanding was that we were kind of coming to the conclusion of, do we go forward with an SOI or not? So,
That's what we have,
Sort
a
of our-
decision we've been talking about.
right,
it. We
that
haven't
would be
decided
that would be the,
That
our product of this.
Our decision, this leading into this
Do we-
vote
yeah.
tonight, is it an appropriate time? Are we prepared to say, let's at least do that?
Yes.
Don, I think when the group first met, the charter was vague enough that you could, I think, you know, and I've put this out of my head probably for a year now, but as you're talking, I'm thinking, you know, when I first came here, yeah, I was probably figuring to make some recommendations about, you know, what should be changed. But over time, it's gotten too complicated. I can't evaluate how to solve these problems.
Yeah, I think if we had 2 more years, we couldn't come up with proper recommendations with the resources and the people around the table today. That's not to say that people aren't very intelligent and smart and
No,
kind of
no.
all that stuff. We just don't have the
It's just-
appropriate
it's-
resources to,
right.
to do
Isn't a
that.
feasibility study supposed to address?
Yeah, so part of that, you know, kind of the SOI is just to start the process. So they just say, in the SOIs are pretty brief and limited. There's not a whole lot of substance to it. You're just getting in the queue. And then once you're in the queue, they evaluate you and they kind of either invite you or don't invite you based on how they want to issue the funding. And then once you get into that queue, that Module 3 feasibility study, that's when you hire, you know, kind of a team of architects and engineers. They look at what your problems are. Are your problems really, do they agree with what, you know, with your problems or not? And they come up with how to best tackle those things and what options are at that point. And even they can come up with it and give any number of things like, oh, you need a new school. And at that time, you could walk away and not do anything. But that's kind of the stepping process of the MSBA.
Part of this, I guess I bring, you know, I spent 35, 40 years working for municipal government in one capacity or another. And this has been my first real foray experience into the inner sanctum of the great educational process. So I bring this, I must admit, I bring a certain bias from all of those years that I guess can best, how do I encapsulate it? The perception has always been, by myself, a lot of people, town managers, selectmen I've known, municipal finance people, that because there is this very lack of specialized training, which we all recognize, or the ability to, nobody can design a school here. So what happens is you cede that authority to the state. And I was just talking about
Yeah.
we all have horror stories of examples of state bureaucracy, and that you lose control of saying, this is kind of the type of school we want, because I've heard these complaints, I think, at this table. Once you get into MSBA, they open a book and say, okay, if you fit into this column, turn over the page over here and say, you need this because it's in our book.
Right.
That, to me, is, I don't know as I have a solution to it, but I have a concern that you're ceding authority to the state to come in and they're gonna tell us, this is what you need, and don't bother me with objecting to it.
Well, the state cannot tell us what we need. The state cannot tell us what our deficiencies are. The state can tell us what our choices are for addressing that, or how they think we should live with it or take care of it or something like that. But they can't tell us what our deficiencies are.
Well, what more importantly, they can say what they're willing to pay for and what they're not willing to pay for. So the only other solution of not doing this is the towns paying for it 100% out of their pocket, and you don't have to go to the state. Because you're not gonna get any state funding, which isn't gonna happen.
And that's, in a lot of ways, that's a preferable solution. The part that I get stuck on is if you go do anything major to the high school without MSBA, then the next time you do go to MSBA for something at the high school, they're gonna say, oh, you know all that stuff you didn't do 15 years ago? We want you to retrofit it now to our current, to the standards that you didn't put in back then.
Okay.
And they're gonna get you one way or the other. If there's any way that the scope of this comes out to be something that the towns could absorb on their own, I'm all for it. But I just don't see that right now.
But I'd also think that most of the towns would be looking that if you're leaving, and it's a decent percentage of money typically from the state that they'd be willing to pay,
Right.
that most of the towns, I would think, it's gonna be a hard sell to kind of say, hey, we left state money on the table because we want to go and do it on our own and not be told what to
And
do.
I've also got to agree with what Perry said, is that any recommendation we make would become the
talking
only
point.
thing anybody ever talks about in our report. And everybody would immediately find fault with it. Did you think of this? Did you think of that? Did you think of the other thing? You know, if we said, let's go put an addition on and make it out of straw, because that's the cheapest construction, you know, people would come back and go, well, did you consider paper mache? You know, I mean, and I think it's important to kind of scale back and say, there's big deficiencies, and we want to emphasize what needs to be addressed in the high school, as opposed to putting forth recommendations that we know are going to be disregarded.
I would think the right vehicle for that would really be the building committee, which would be a subsequent committee to this one.
Right.
That would, from seeing what happened over at Center School, being involved in that project, it was really the building committee that had a lot of the talk with MSBA and a lot of those checks and balances of,
And
you
the
say this,
architects, yeah.
but we want that, and that back and forth. And I
I
think they would take
was not on
our
the
SOI.
board when that started, so I defer to your
Right.
experience on that. Was there receptivity on the part of MSBA during those? Did they make accommodations?
Yes, and I think
Yeah.
Ellen
Ellen, when she came in and spoke with us, she did say,
Sturgis was in
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
and she was able to tell us that, yes, there were things that they negotiated back and forth, and
There were some things that were just, that they said no to. They wanted to put the senior center in there, and MSBA just said no.
And then they worked with some of the kindergarten, I believe the kindergarten and
Yeah.
pre-K classrooms to make that work into
Yeah,
the
but then
MSBA
there
model.
were other areas where they were able to reach an accommodation with
Yes,
MSD.
and my follow-up questions, pretty much, the answers there too,
Right.
were that more likely they were not going to be pushing anything on us that we weren't going to already be considering anyways, and that, you know, I mean, you're going to have some, my view is that, you know, we could do this with no money, but we would have to do it with considerably less money and would not be able to do half of what we would like to do with that considerably less money.
The other thing that my understanding is, just because they say no, they don't want to fund it, it doesn't mean you can't
Yeah.
still opt to do it. You're just responsible for the cost of that
Tired.
feature or that
Yeah.
item or that room or that kind of what have you. So you're still able to, you know, I guess customize it within their parameters, but you'll be flipping the bill for
Yes.
that piece of it.
But I think it's valuable for this group to be saying that there seriously are deficiencies, and we can document, we can support this, and not just say, you know, it's an old school, and it seems like blah, blah, blah. So we've been collecting the data that says that there really are issues, so that it's not unreasonable to be filing an SOI. And that we have the objective data to support it, and not just the subjective impression of it's not sparkly and new.
And I also think that, you know, a year ago when we were talking about the same thing, we decided not to kind of move forward with a recommendation of an SOI and just delve into things a little bit more. At least in my mind personally, it's quite apparent there's some needs at the high school. At least for me, you know, kind of the statement of interest is, you know, a no-brainer. That's the next logical step of, you know, showing that, yes, we found some things that are worth taking to the next step, and that's just the next of a number of steps that need to get taken.
And I think that in terms of cost, I mean, we have to pay for the enrollment forecast, but up until you get to the point where you have to fund a feasibility study, you're not incurring any additional costs.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's my understanding. I don't want to put myself forth as an expert on the MSBA process, so having said that, that's my understanding.
So my view on recommending is that there are definitely deficiencies that have been found, and they're significant. But I would state the proposal as submission to the building authority at some point, not necessarily 2016. But I think that there's enough other issues relating to the district that it may be in our interest to not rush to a submission this spring or winter. And some of those things that I see are, one, credibility of the district with its member towns and its finances. Having gone out to the towns to say and help people to understand what we've figured out and understand now, so that there's some consensus building and grassroots building. We have a leadership transition, and we know that we will have a second leadership transition sometime in the coming 6 months to a year or more. And I think that all those things lead me to say that we have work to do to generate consensus for submitting a statement of interest, and I think one is desirable.
That's a slightly different topic, but I want to make sure Don's comfortable with where we are right now. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say that, yes, I do. I share Mark's opinion that although we've identified a lot of needs, I honestly don't see the school committee and the school district in its current state being able to take on the follow-on process of the
Okay.
SOI. Because, you know, once, And part of why we put it off a year ago was we felt like we weren't ready and we're really only going to get one chance. And I feel like that, you know, in terms of our information and everything, we're ready. And none of this is going to change in the next year for the better in terms of, oh, we don't, you know, these problems won't magically solve themselves. They will still be here. But in another year or two, we'd be in a more stable place in terms of being ready. But that's
That's
the
a
school committee's
I was just
That's
gonna
a-
say.
yes.
That's really, all we can say is, we recommend that you go ahead with an SOI. We feel that we have the documentation to support entering into a project at some point. Because like I said, none of these problems will fix themselves, so.
As the high school principal, I would want to say, recommend we move on doing things as soon as possible, and then leave it to the school committee's purview to decide whether that's something they wish to undertake at this time or push off to.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't think
I
this
agree.
committee should be deciding that on behalf of the school committee.
Well, I'm looking at it a little bit differently, and thanks for putting together this timeline. I'm looking at it from a budgetary point of view. We're already
All right,
developing.
you're,
I know, you know I jump ahead.
I know,
Don't give
I know.
me the paper if you don't want me to jump ahead. Just
all right, let's,
putting it-
we're on page
Can I
9.
make my point to this conversation that
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
having and talking about? We're developing the FY17 budget. If you look at the numbers that we have for feasibility studies, I don't see that. Mark's on the finance subcommittee for the school committee. I don't see that as being part of the budget development process for FY17. However, if you jump down a year, I mean, it's a long process. The possibility exists that we could do that level of planning for money for the feasibility study for FY18. And to Mark's point, we'd have all this time. People in Lancaster really don't have an awareness of even this committee. And I talked to Ryan McNutt, who said that we should make an appointment to meet with him
Okay.
and share this. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done to publicize it, you know, have the information out there and speak with people. But just from strictly funding the feasibility study, I mean, I think Michael had said it was $250,000, and you look at what these other communities have spent, it's a lot more than that. So that's my perspective.
Okay, all right.
I guess
Thank you.
from my perspective, I think we're jumbling a whole bunch of other committee stuff. And this committee is just space planning, and that's all it's tasked to do. And that's all we're supposed to do, and we've been doing it for 2 years, which is,
Right to the point.
in my opinion, way too long. And this committee's decision shouldn't be based on timing or budgets or any of that stuff. That's a school committee item. This committee is just supposed to be showing we have needs.
Yep. And
Do we have
should move
needs?
forward
You
on.
pass that on, and if they decide to do it this year, the following year, the last thing I want to do is hold on to this thing. I do not want to hold on to this thing
I agree.
for more time. Now, if the school committee wants to hold on to it, the school committee can hold on to it. But that is not this committee's purview. And we don't have all the answers for those things, but we had a job and a task to do. I think we're approaching the end of that job and task, and we should complete that job and task.
So let's get back to the presentation. So a statement of interest is just the first step in the MSBA's program for building construction. The purpose of the SOI, I'm on page 4, is for the district to identify perceived deficiencies within a school facility. That is taken right off the MSBA website. The superintendent of the district files the the statement of interest after authorization by the school committee. And there's a very strict protocol that MSBA requires the school committee to follow in doing that authorization. I'm not going to go into that here. The invitation period is 6 to 8 weeks. It usually starts in mid-January, so it ends either in late February or early March. The MSBA could take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to evaluate all of its statements of interests. And if they decide that your statement of interest is something worth pursuing, they will then issue an invitation for the school district. They will invite you into the eligibility phase. So once again, the statement of interest, I'm on page 6, requires no financial commitment on the part of the school district. And then I go into the eligibility period. Now, after you get the invitation, and this is a big deal to people on finance committees, which I was on, and the selectmen, which you are on, after you get the invitation to enter an eligibility period, you have 270 days to respond. You have 9 months to respond.
You being?
The school district. Which means that if you get that invitation, let's say in March, April, sometime in May, there's probably going to be the need for a special town meeting in order to respond.
In the fall.
In the fall, or the winter.
And what would the question be before the town meeting? General.
If the school committee decides to borrow in order to fund the feasibility study, that would be the item on the agenda.
Or
Right?
perhaps alternatively, shall the towns be assessed additional money this year to pay in full
Right.
feasibility?
Right. That would be another way of wording it. You know, I think at that point, whether or not the school, and this is just a personal opinion, and again, this is not something we're going to decide here tonight, but I think the school committee's got to go out to the towns and take their temperature in a formal way. But that's probably going to require a special town meeting, which as a finance committee person, I don't like, because then you're looking at a big expenditure in the absence of all the other financial pictures of the town. And as a selectman, you don't like because it incurs an additional cost. But,
Well, cost of the election.
but
Town
you know,
meeting is-
the point is just that that's not the school district's fault. It's the MSBA's timetable that's forcing that.
SOIs can only be submitted in, there's only one time window for each year.
I believe that's
Yeah,
correct.
They open it up in that mid-January.
You know, unless they're doing special projects, like the science labs were. So anyway, you know, I looked at other feasibility study costs. North Middlesex, theirs was $940,000. Concord Carlisle's was $1,300,000. Tewksbury has a similar sized school as we do, and theirs was $1,300,000.
But are all those schools that ended up with new buildings?
I don't know about Tewksbury, but
Well, I think
North
Tewksbury
Middlesex and Concord Carlisle did. But, you know, I think that that's independent of whether or not you renovate or, because you've got to do all the same engineering and hydrologic and safety studies. The only variable cost is going to be how much you pay the architects if you're doing a renovation versus a new build. So I would think it'd be pretty much the same. I mean, Concord Carlisle got a $1.3 million feasibility study. They deliberately started out looking at just the renovation, and it turned into a complete replacement, because the difference in cost between the renovation and the complete replacement was $20 or $25 million. So for a new school, you know, that's like getting a new school for $25 million, and so they went with it.
Bill, do you have any knowledge of what the feasibility was for the science labs, or do you, Harry?
I don't think we got,
Number, but it was, did we do a feasibility study?
No.
Or did we just, I mean, I know we definitely put money down for them
Yeah,
to
we put,
create drawings and a plan. But I don't know that it was a feasibility study.
I don't think it was a full-blown feasibility study.
Didn't get to that phase.
But I don't think it was a large enough project to
Right, we
justify
did get through a feasibility study of soil because we moved to the next stage,
Right.
which became the town meeting looking
Yeah.
for funding for the project.
you know, it may have
There's an
been,
architect and engineer.
Right, after
involved
that
in
feasibility,
stuff.
that feasibility study, we did bring in, we got an OPM, we got the architect, we got the engineers, all came on
you may have
board.
had a different pathway because it was a special project.
Right, and that was a special project, that was off a different,
Right.
Yep.
Different template from the MSBA. My recollection from when Ellen Sturgis was in here is that she said, is it the center school that just got
Center
built?
school.
That was 220 or 225,
yes.
the feasibility study for that.
That's all.
And that's a much smaller scale than
Well, it's-
Neshoba. So. That's also, so the MSBA eligibility period, you have to sign, you have to execute the MSBA feasibility study agreement. They will partially reimburse the feasibility study,
Oh, really?
yes.
Do you know at what rate?
I think it's whatever rate you're, I thought the reimbursement was the rate that you were selected at.
Yeah, but I
Which is
don't,
gone.
I don't know that that's determined before you sign the eligibility agreement.
Is that
Up
only,
to 45%,
is it only if you go forward with
I don't
the
know.
project?
I don't
Then?
know. That's a good question, but I don't know the answer to that. I think the highest number I've seen for reimbursement of the feasibility study is 45%.
The one I recently did, which is a smaller one for a inside project, I got the percentage back before I had to move forward with the feasibility study.
Okay.
So I went through the SOI process, and then when it was approved and put into the pipeline,
Yeah.
I got assigned the architect and engineer, and then we started talking about the costs of the feasibility study with the reimbursement rate, and that's when the way the
All right,
project was going back up.
that's similar to, I think, the step of signing the agreement with them.
Yes.
Because you have to put together, before before MSBA will sign that agreement, they have to know that you've got funding for the feasibility study, which, you've got to put together a building committee, and they specify who's supposed to be on the building committee in terms of positions. And there's, establish enrollment projections and stuff like that. Hire the project team, hire the architect, and then you go through a bunch of other stuff. And then we're back to page 9, where I'm just taking you through the feasibility study. And again, if you've got a couple town meetings, you've got a couple town elections in there in this time frame, but you're going from the SOI in January 16. And if everything went well and you submit during that period of time, you're looking at executing the feasibility agreement no later than the end of February in 2017.
Which means you gotta have the money approved, right?
I believe that means you have to have the money approved at that
Feasibility
point.
studies contracted me.
Yeah.
They want the funds.
So from there, I went back to, I switched gears. Again, this is a presentation for the school committee. So I switch gears and I say, that's the outline of the SOI. And here's what we've, the task force wants to tell you about what's going on in the school. And what I took was, we identified a bunch of critical items from Kathy's spreadsheet last week. I just copied down the critical items by area and put them in here. So, again, the first question is, do we want to recommend that the school committee pursue an SOI?
Question. You appreciate all your research on that. Seems to me I saw somewhere, but correct me if I'm wrong in my recollection, that when an SOI is filed by the signature on the form, somewhere there's a box that you have to check off. At some point, it's either filing the SOI or the eligible, that we believe that there is community support for this project. So we're not just making up something that we're asking you to consider
Yeah.
that has no chance of passing. Isn't there something on the form?
School Building Authority has their frequently asked questions page under the topic, how many SOIs can a district submit? Imagine you have many schools that need attention. We do not limit the number of SOIs that a district can submit. However, an SOI should only be filed for a facility where the district has the ability to gain the proper local approvals and fund a project in the next 2 years.
Is the ability to gain, is that what it said?
Ability to gain the proper local approvals and fund a project in the next 2 years.
Does that mean just like having town meetings? Does that satisfy that? Or-
Fund implies that in my view. So basically it's saying that the community is supporting the district in their effort.
And MSBA recognizes the difference between a town like Hopkinton, which is not part of a regional school
Yeah.
district, and a regional school district which has school committee representatives. So,
I think their support factor would be approval from the school committee, because that to them would trigger community support,
yes.
because that's your community board.
No.
Which takes us to, Dave, kind of what you were saying. This is, we are making a recommendation to the school committee. We're not looking to issue the SOI.
I'm going ahead one step.
Right.
If they do, based on whatever we give them or independently, decide to file an SOI, my question is checking that box. And I think it goes to what Mark was talking about, building bridges to the community so that they don't see this thing coming out, oh, there they go again, they put a thing in the
Well,
pipeline because they.
Oh, wait a minute, Don. I've got to interrupt you there, because I've done everything I personally can to inform the selectmen of all the towns that this is going on.
No fault implied, though.
Okay.
But in the larger political scheme of people that aren't in the inside the way you are
Yeah.
and some of us, my question is not so much addressed at here, is how does MSBA make the determination when you check that box? What should be done at the local level so that that is not just a pro forma check?
I think the school committee has to make that decision. The school committee's got to be able to check that box with confidence. And that may differ in each town.
And the other thing that, everything I've seen, we've done a lot more legwork in trying to kind of get to the point of determining whether we submit an SOI than a lot of other, there didn't seem to be a whole lot to the SOIs in a lot of other towns that we kind of,
Right.
I think we've done a lot more upfront work to trying to determine need.
I feel that the two newspapers that serve Bolton have done an unbelievable job of covering these committee meetings. And, is the general populace in Bolton aware of the detail? And, no. But are they aware something's going on? They're vaguely aware something's going on. Some people more so than others, but, we've worked hard not to be operating in a vacuum.
Not saying anything's being hidden.
And I would, the traditional way since I've been in the school district that something gets presented to the towns and, is you either do this or your kids are gonna not get a good education, they won't get good jobs, they're gonna marry somebody ugly, and your grandchildren are all gonna have little pigtails on their backsides if you don't spend the money for the school district. And I think that we've got a very compelling, here's the issues we can go forward on this. And I really believe they're compelling once they get out there. But I would say that no one has any reason to put that information out there until after the SOI is submitted. Because until people don't pay attention, until you've got to commit money. And if you just say, I'm just going to advertise this until I get a groundswell of support, you're never going to get a groundswell of support. Because until you say that on such and such a day, you're going to have to vote to spend money, you're not going to grab people's attention. And so, you know, you're kind of asking the chicken or the egg question. And I think it's incumbent on the school committee to say, you know, do we think this stuff is compelling enough to go ahead with this?
I come back, I was leaning a certain way when I came in here, and I try to keep an open mind occasionally. Mark's comment, and I think what I heard Maureen say, and you have kind of put it all together, saying, we gotta pass the ball back to these people. I don't think it's in our purview now to recommend or not that the school committee file an SOI. I like your idea. We've done our job. Here's the data, here's the deficiencies we've identified. You guys will answer questions through Bob or whomever, and then you make a tough political decision, whatever kind of decision it is, whether or not to file it this year. I personally would rather put it off a year or two. Number one, we're still suffering sticker shock in Stowe. Number two, you just mentioned that the SOI people are gonna tie into the enrollment projections, which we had just now, earlier tonight, said, let's go ahead with that. We'd be better situated if we had that in our hands already. You've got the leadership of the vacuum of leadership, not vacuum, but a temporary transition of leadership that might impact the direction it goes for a whole host of reasons. I might argue that perhaps at a hearing of the school committee rather than this group.
Right.
So I guess in answer to the question, your question was whether or not to recommend filing with SOI. I would urge that this committee hand off its results and don't make any recommendation. This is up to you.
Do you mean not make a recommendation as far as when an SOI is submitted, or not make any recommendation about an SOI at
Yes.
all?
My personal, I would feel comfortable if this committee said not this year.
So recommended SOI, but not, doesn't
No,
specify.
I would recommend, if you decide to file one, we hope it wouldn't be this year for a host of reasons. But leave it up to them, because they're the ones that have to make the
Well,
decision.
you know, we could, you know, the motion I have in there is an example. I mean, if it's just a matter of taking out the date recommendation, you know, that's not a big deal.
I feel like we can say that we feel that we are providing them with sufficient,
For them to determine.
with sufficient data to
Yeah.
justify filing for an SOI when they determine that they can. You know, it's urgent enough that we're not saying, well, maybe in 10 years or something. It's going to be, or it should probably be done sooner rather than later, but not necessarily this year, given that.
You know, we can just, you know, take out the, all right, so let's just discuss, should we recommend an SOI, that the school committee submit an SOI for the high school?
And I think it's important to kind of make, after all the work this committee has done, I think it's critical to kind of say, do we think there should be I'm not talking about timeline, I'm not talking about
Right.
budgets, I'm not talking about anything else, just based on need, should an SOI, should we recommending an SOI? And I think it is critical that that is part of the motion and the vote.
I agree.
Bob, what was the charge of this committee? Because the school committee authorized this committee, correct? And what was the charge? To do what?
The minutes are amazingly blank,
Yes.
Okay, so
amazingly blank.
You have to go back
It
to
would
Michael
seem-
Wood's letter to the selectmen and the various groups 2.5 years ago.
So say if this committee were charged with doing a needs assessment of building issues at the high school, then you would just submit that summary, correct?
The school committee vote said nothing more than forming a space needs study committee.
Without
Task
any,
force.
without any
Nothing,
objective, a charge?
nothing.
So,
I went back and I looked at the minutes, there's nothing in there. The only description of that ever existed of what this committee might do was Michael Wood's letter to the towns,
Yes.
okay,
inviting people, the selectmen, and so on and so forth. The invitations went to the selectmen, the finance committees, the advisory committees, and the capital planning committees.
Okay.
And they were each group from each town was invited to send a representative to these meetings.
So if we could glean a charge from anything,
Very vague, that letter.
all right, but if you could, like I said, glean a charge from it, then that's what to present the school committee with, and then they go from there. I think the Space Task Force needs summary provides a lot of information, and the summary point or the jump-off point or the handoff point in my mind would be, the next step would be for the school committee to decide if you want to submit an SOI, if the superintendent wants to do that. And here's all this information about that, see you later, and do a new committee and charge them.
I guess what my concern is, and partially it's based on having done this for 2 years, if the outcome of all of this work is, oh yeah, we found out that there's some real issues at the high school, you guys decide what you want to do about it. I think that, I don't know that that will be a very compelling message, and I don't know if that will create much momentum around any sort of a timeline.
But then you make a recommendation to the school committee, and the school committee can then act on it. And I don't know that given, I know we added an additional meeting in January, but, so I don't know the extent to which the discussion this Wednesday, there'll be enough time for us to have the kind of discussion we need to have, and have all our
This-
questions asked, answered.
There's no way this gets on the agenda Wednesday.
Oh, so I saw December 16th on this. So that's not on there?
I
I actually.
That could be a good
Now,
thing.
let me double check, because I think
No, I know
The agenda
it's,
hasn't been posted yet, Bill.
No.
it hasn't been.
No, I
Okay.
just checked it.
okay.
Because I know I put it forward to Alita as 2 items on the agenda. One of them was the enrollment forecast.
Enrollment forecast.
And the second one, I said, if time allows,
Yeah,
and depending on the vote tonight, we may be able to present the SOI. But I said, I know that's a packed meeting, so I framed it to George and Alita that if they don't feel that it could fit into this meeting, we don't mind moving it to that first,
January
this
6th, yeah.
January 6th meeting.
Or the
So I don't know
13th.
how that
Yeah,
landed.
I went and I started working on this right after the last meeting. I've learned stuff since then.
Mm,
It's not gonna be on next week's agenda.
okay.
It just isn't gonna be on next week's agenda. There's too much discussion required around this to make it worthwhile putting on next week's agenda.
So what we have in hand is an estimate for the enrollment forecast. We have a document which we have documentation of a variety of needs, building needs. And the next step would be to evaluate those needs and make a decision about an SOI. And this committee, when I hear people saying this, that it's not for this committee to decide to do an SOI, we deliver this to the school committee, then say, that's your next step, and oh, by the way, here's all the information that you need to have.
Here's the supporting documentation.
Right, and then it's for the school committee to decide what the next steps are, if they want to establish another group to take it to the next step.
I'd agree with everything you said, except I think we really should be making a recommendation from this committee after 2 years of study.
Oh, no, yeah, but it's, if you had a charge, then it makes it fairly focused.
Well, I'll just go back. So this is from meeting minutes from December 18th, 2014, that got officially reviewed and approved on January 22nd, 2015. That item 4, the task force reiterated its purpose to determine whether or not there's a need in the high school for more space, and if there is need, determine what kind of space is needed.
Okay. But it does not say whether or not to recommend an SOI should be filed.
We've talked at a bunch of meetings regarding kind of getting to this point of kind of making a determination of what our thoughts are. We went from, why aren't we kind of recommending what the solutions to not even being able to stand up to say whether we recommend to kind of submit a letter saying, we have some issues, could we get in line and have someone look at them?
Mhm.
Jody, you don't have Michael's original letter in your file, do you, by any chance?
We switched to Gmail, and I can hardly ever find things. But I will give it a shot.
Well, wait,
Harry,
I'm
I have
sorry,
it on-
it's 2 years old, there's a lot of water under the bridge, and he's not here.
Mhm.
So it's up to us to decide what we're gonna do. I think that we have put a lot of work into this task force needs summary. We're going through and we're prioritizing the things we found. I think if you turn around and say, we're done, you guys figure out what to do with it, it's not gonna go anywhere.
I agree.
And I think that I would personally be very frustrated with that outcome.
I would be extremely frustrated with that.
So I believe it's well within again, we're not telling anybody what they have to do. We're not engaging any outside group. We're recommending to the school committee that they submit a statement of interest to the MSBA at a time they deem appropriate.
That's great. That's it.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Okay.
I located the minutes for the committee, which were October 22nd, 2013.
Minutes of the school committee?
Correct. Mr. Wood advised in follow-up to the work previously done on the Science Lab's needs study. He is asking the school committee to consider forming a task force to determine the building conditions and space needs. Mr. Wood advised that this will only be a study task force the first year and will not have any budget impact the first year. So on a motion, it is passed unanimously.
I would also remind everyone that a year ago, we had Michael's draft, which had us submitting an SOI. Right, I mean, clearly if we're gonna go back to the original intent, we had an original intent to submit an SOI because we already delayed it a year, right? We didn't feel we were ready, that we didn't have enough of our own research to really support that at the time, and we put a stop to it. And at that time, there was not even a question of, he had the whole timeline in that original piece, so.
Can I make a motion?
Please do.
I move that the Neshoba Space Needs Task Force recommend to the Neshoba Regional School District School Committee that the school committee authorize the superintendent to submit a statement of interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority at a time that they believe would be appropriate.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second that.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor of recommending that the school committee pursue an SOI, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
All abstaining? Don said no. Any abstentions? All right, motion passes 7-1. Okay, so we reviewed the SOI presentation to the school committee. Are there any comments or changes or additions or deletions that we should make to that?
Could I make one recommendation?
Please.
For consideration. You note a lot of critical space issues at the high school. There were a significant number of other deficiencies that we discussed that we did not deem critical. What immediately jumps to mind is the number of available classrooms, for example. Could you maybe have some sort of statement that indicates that there were many other needs that are of a significant nature, but that the committee did not identify as immediately critical or something
Well,
to that extent?
Yeah, again, I did this right after our last meeting. If we go through and set more priorities, like maybe we'll do important tonight, I would add them to report.
Okay.
And as many of those as we get through, I can add to the report.
Okay, so you weren't
So-
necessarily planning to stop there,
No.
that's just what we had
No,
gotten
that
through
was-
the
The
that
last-
was just-
health, safety, legal, and accreditation.
Yeah, that was,
Beautiful.
that was what we,
And I
that was
think
only as far
The
as we
school
got.
committee gets the packet of the spreadsheet so they can see the work product and then the summary.
Yeah. Are there any other comments about the presentation?
Do you want me to take that off if they were thinking of having it on the agenda for the 16th? Would you like me to have them move that to the 6th?
It's gonna be a long
You
meeting.
you know, my question is, will it get the kind of discussion it deserves? If it's not gonna get the kind of
I
discussion.
don't know all the items on the agenda,
I
but
would move it. Well, what do you think, Mark?
I am completely ignorant of what's on the
Well, I am
List.
too, but I just.
Somebody made a reference to a packed meeting. Who said that?
Well,
Lorraine
judging
Bowden.
from all the discussion of things to put on the agenda at the last meeting, it
Mhm.
sounds like it will be a very,
Well,
because you're going to have
e-
the
even-
presentations
Yep.
from the two
Yeah.
search
Even given
partners.
the discussion we've had here among ourselves tonight,
Mhm.
I can imagine the degree of questions that will be raised from people that haven't been as intimately connected with it as those of us here.
So, you know, it's not a problem if it gets pushed off.
and that's the thing, I don't think it's a problem. So
No,
might as well
you know-
go with the 6th and make it so it can be a
Yeah.
good discussion rather than rushed.
This-
Just convince Lorraine, we all set.
Shouldn't be a
Is that a
problem.
date
She's
that you
so
can
in
make?
control about everything.
I have a conflict on the 6th, but I might be able to do something on that. That's a different issue. Okay, if everyone's comfortable with the presentation, thank you very much.
Thank you for putting that together.
A lot of work.
The next thing on our agenda, we're not too far behind, but we're behind, is an organizational discussion. And this is a short item on the agenda because it's just to get people thinking about it. I don't think we're going to make any decisions tonight. But when we were first formed, Michael put the group together and Michael ran the meetings. Over the past few months, he's kind of been ceding management of the meetings to me. But as he's not here, should we formally organize ourselves, even though we're only going to be in existence for potentially another 6 or 8 weeks or something like that?
What would that, how would that be different, and what would that mean practically?
Well, we'd have a formal vote on who's the chairman and what a quorum is and who the members are.
I think that's a
I'm
good
sorry.
idea.
That's good for all the kids watching, you know? That's good.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids who watch.
Oh, yeah. Their parents make them watch it when they won't go to sleep at night.
That's right. You behave or you're gonna have to watch the school committee meetings.
I think that's an excellent idea. It's a topic that's come up multiple times. and
Yes.
I think it would be nice to resolve it.
Okay, so we will put it on the agenda again for whenever we have our next meeting. Is everyone else got any comments or questions about that?
It might be helpful to just ask the school committee to render clarity as we might advise them, since they're a chartering organization.
I understand that. Let me, I would be reluctant at this point in the process to go ask someone what our charter is.
I agree.
Because if it's not what we've worked on for the past 2 years, there's going to be a lot of frustrated people on this committee.
Right, not just thinking about the membership side of things, let them, you know,
Would it make sense for us to come up with
Send
our
an
own
advisory.
definition
Yes.
in the absence of the superintendent, and maybe let the school committee know, in the absence of the superintendent, we have decided that this is, we see ourselves
Yes.
organized.
De facto, what has happened in the last 2 years, this is the way it's been
Right.
structured
Do you-
and run. And we think it's working pretty well for the remainder of how long we're
Right.
gonna go.
Yep.
If
But
you
with
give
the
them a
loss of
suggestion, it
the
might help.
Just an
chair, we
advisory.
wanted to,
I mean, it's really just at the end of the day, it's just the chair position. Someone needs to
Right.
run the meeting, right? I mean,
Right.
and
Well, yeah, I think.
Well,
Need to
there have
determine
been
who's on
questions
the
multiple
committee.
times
Yeah,
about
determine
how many
who's-
people are members, what's a quorum, who gets to vote,
Yeah,
so,
So that's been left fuzzy all along.
yes, it
yeah,
has.
and, you know, I think if we spend 20 minutes or half an hour at our next meeting, we'll eliminate a lot of possible challenges to things like that.
Somebody, for the sake of this argument, somebody could, not to sabotage, but coming in at the last minute on approving the final report, and come in with somebody from the capital planning committee, the finance committee, from towns that have never showed up, and
Right.
said, I'm here, I'm gonna vote no, or yes, or whatever,
Right.
when they haven't had any involvement.
Right,
I don't think that's a good outcome.
I 100% agree with you.
so let's just work to avoid that stuff and, okay.
Is that-
Is there, I guess I'm wondering why we would leave this to the next meeting. I would make a motion that Bob's chair, and that everybody who's here, or the people who've been showing up, we're the members, we're the voters,
There have been other people.
Yeah, there are other,
That are
there are
not
people
here
who,
tonight.
regularly.
We want a secretary too, okay?
But if you, if we limit it to the people that are here tonight, then a quorum is a majority of this group.
Well, then, however many, let's make a decision and move on.
I think we
You
need a
know,
list of members.
this is a warning shot across the bow to
Okay,
everybody else who's kind of been half-heartedly participating,
gotcha,
that they need to be at the next one.
perfect.
Do you have
So-
a good
Good, then
contact
let's make
list
that
for
nice
all
and
of those
clear.
people so that everyone can?
I
I
have,
know
the-
I have an
Lynn
email
has
from
come a lot.
recently.
yes,
Yeah, within the last
I,
6
Letting
months.
has come a lot.
I copied in, my email list and Michael's email list for this committee are the same,
Oh, I didn't know that.
because I copied his entire email list.
What's
Several
the
months
number,
ago.
do you remember the number of people?
It's like 14 or 16.
Wow.
You know, Bruce,
Bruce Walbridge,
Walbridge?
Ross
Yes, he
Perry.
came with some earlier.
yeah,
So would you say, for this purpose, he is still in that group? Kind of anybody who's shown up more than once in
you know,
2 years, I guess.
I guess that's what we can discuss.
Yeah.
You know, I guess it's out of that list of
And
people that we
Saborn,
come up with a quorum of
Middleburg.
8,
Bob's-
right?
Leave that to you.
I got the
So-
email list here, there's like 20 people on it.
Yeah, I got
but there's some people on there that have never, I think,
Yeah,
showed up.
Let's address that next week, because we need to get on with
yeah.
scheduling future meetings.
Mhm.
I think what we should do is just ask the school committee members, what evenings do they not already have commitments, and then grab
Well,
those.
that's very nice of you.
Are
Appreciate
there any
that.
evenings that you guys already have?
Are
we doing right now? Next meeting?
We don't have a meeting scheduled after tonight.
The school committee might be moving to a different night temporarily, and that
Not till
complicates
the end
things.
of January. Dr. Bates's schedule where he teaches starts January 27th, but we'll have a better idea of that. But Mark's right, we may be adjusting.
So let's at least do one in January, do the next one in
Right, so
January.
today's the 10th.
Okay. You're doing a presentation on the 6th. Do we want to meet after that or before that?
It's either the 6th or the 13th, I'm gonna do the presentation.
Okay,
I think it's gonna be on the 13th,
okay.
It's a
but
Wednesday.
I could do the 6th if I have
All
to.
right, but in terms of this group meeting, what are folks thinking about?
What about the week before the
Thursdays for a while.
13th?
That first week back is, you know, except for Wednesday, it's clear on my calendar, but
So what about the 7th, the Thursday the 7th?
That's fine with me.
I'm not around on that day, but I can catch up.
okay.
That look pretty.
Let's do the 7th.
Okay.
Do you want to pick another day in January? Because we should be winding up pretty quickly.
That-
21st?
Um,
About 2 weeks?
Wait. So, no, I'm not time.
I think there's a nice symmetry to having 2 more meetings and approving our organization on the meeting we vote to disband.
It certainly makes it official though, doesn't it?
We don't mess around.
So then, what, the 24th, the 21st, the 28th?
21st is fine with me. I
What
don't
day
know.
of the week?
Thursday.
That's a Thursday.
Thursday.
So we're saying January 21st?
Yeah.
It's fine with me, the 21st.
And let's pick one day in February. Is the 11th okay?
Oh, 1 second, I just have to, let me put
What
this
kind
in
of
and
a
I
day
can
is that?
check.
That's a Thursday.
That's
Which one did you say?
I would suggest the 11th.
February
February?
11th. Let's see what we got.
February 11th.
Yes.
Yeah.
The week after that is school vacation.
I don't know what to do with my free time on Thursday nights. What's this?
Okay, so we're doing
So far.
space task force. SPS.
I'm okay the 11th.
All right, yeah, I'm in.
Okay. So we've got January 7th, January 21st, and February 11th for now?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's fine, and then we'll,
Did you say 3 dates?
Yeah.
January?
Oh,
Oh, 7th, I didn't have that one. Thank you.
Wait, that's the wrong thing. Okay. We've got continued categorizing space needs.
yeah,
So are we bringing champagne on the February 11th, or?
I think you and I are on the same page.
If we do, we can't meet here.
We'll have to move the meeting to another venue.
That's,
So just before we
Yes,
start
yeah, our
this,
final meeting should be in a
SOY.
separate venue
SOY
with no recording equipment.
I just wanted to say on behalf of the faculty of the high school, how much we appreciate all the work you've done. This whole committee, 2 years is above and beyond the call for anybody.
we agree.
Bob has done a tremendous amount, I think we all know, behind the scenes. I funneled him data, Perry's funneled him data, he's digested it, he's done everything. I thought flowers, I thought, how do we repay time back to your family? We don't. I'm giving you one of our very final coffee cups from Nishoba.
Thank you. Oh, excellent.
Just a token of the appreciation that the
It's
faculty
empty.
has. You fill it up when you work on the next set of minutes.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
we just so appreciate all the work that you've done.
All right, thank you.
And
No,
it has
this is
been
very
huge.
nice. I appreciate
Good year.
this. Still have my trusty Emerson School
There you go.
coffee cup from when they were fundraising for that a few years ago. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of work, but it's been very interesting and mostly fun. So, thank you. All right, to finish up, last time we met, we went over the critical issues on Kathy's list,
Well, it's actually
I can
the
share
task
with her.
force
the
list.
task force list that
I just put it on a
Kathy
spreadsheet.
put together.
Okay.
And tonight, we want to classify, determine what's important.
Do you want to go over the definitions? Do you have those definitions?
Actually, I forgot those.
All right, let me find them.
I have one right here.
Oh, you do? You want to read it
Sure.
for the group?
Critical is for areas that need to be addressed because of health, safety, legal, or accreditation issues. Important is for areas that should be addressed because the benefits to the entire student body are large and easy to understand. Recommended would be the areas that should be addressed and the benefits to the student are not spread across all students. Desirable is for areas that should be addressed but are not directly affecting student performance.
What was the middle one between important and desirable?
Recommended.
Well, we're just doing important tonight. Is that correct?
That's what I would propose, yeah.
Okay.
Mr.
So they-
Chairman, just for identification of exhibits, can we put today's date on this document in case we ever go back to it?
Yes,
12/16, 12/10.
12:10.
Russian.
All right. Oh, there it is.
We're only looking at important right now, right?
Start on the mechanical.
So, well, first
Okay,
off,
go
is
ahead.
everybody comfortable with the definition?
You read important?
Important is for areas that should be addressed because the benefits to the entire student body are large and easy to understand.
Right, and I guess I think of that as they are large in that they impact the education of all students.
Yeah, I would distinguish it from critical in this way. Critical was, safety issues, certification, stuff like that. Important is,
Keep the quality of education.
yeah, but it's,
I think it's hitting a lot of students, but not necessarily every single student in every category, but it's
yes,
a significant portion of
Yes.
the
Like the new
students.
classrooms,
yes,
like getting
something,
enough classrooms.
something
is
like that,
important,
yes,
But not a safety issue.
right. So, I guess everyone's comfortable with the definition. Let's get started. School kitchen. I don't hear anything. Drafting lab.
Where are we? First page.
First page.
They were just
Oh,
important.
oh, okay, yeah, I got it.
This is under HVAC, Bob?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. The computer lab. Media center. I'm skipping down to where it says science labs under HVAC. Art rooms.
Actually, I think the science labs
I think the science labs would be
Are
important as well.
important. Just the discomfort all winter long for everybody in those rooms for the exhaust ductwork.
And we're using money ongoing to remediate this each year, is that what that says?
More doing repairs, fixing plumbing, electrical, tiles, windows. There's nothing there that's, putting new benches in because the cost would be too large.
So it's repairs, not renovation.
Right, repairs and renovations.
Okay. All right, so the science labs were important. Art rooms. Next category is water in the science rooms. Now, my understanding, I wonder if that should come off, because that's
I
actually the
think
way it's supposed to be,
I
right?
was gonna say, that is by design, because in order to have that water flow into a drain, it would have to go to a specialty, it's called a tight tank, that has to be pumped out. It can't go into the regular water supply, sewer supply.
I think
Okay.
even current designs
So
have.
we
Current
want-
design, that's usually how it is. It
We
goes
should
right on the
strike it
floor.
off.
We want
Yeah.
to delete that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for example, the Concord Carlisle High School is exactly the same design, right on the floor.
Right on the floor.
Yep.
Okay.
Appliances?
I want to make sure Kathy's with us.
I'm with you.
Okay. Appliances in the kitchen. The equipment all works. It's old, but it works. Anything? Home team locker rooms, septic backs up.
Important,
I think this would go important.
important.
It doesn't make critical.
That is critical from our last meeting.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll change it, sorry.
Does give a certain definition to home team advantage.
The home team disadvantage.
Yeah, it should be visitors' locker rooms then.
Oh, is it? Oh, it's the home team, yeah.
Yeah.
We switched it around. Taken care of.
Yeah. That was critical last time. Okay. Security, that was critical last time. Fans, compressors, pumps. This is, I don't see that as, it's something that needs to be addressed, but I don't see it as something that drives a project.
I would rise that to an important level.
What was
You
that?
would or you wouldn't?
I would not.
Oh, would not.
No, because I think that gets captured on the regular scheduled maintenance program and it's ongoing.
If we were to do a large project, I could see including that in it, but I
Most
wouldn't,
definitely.
let that drive a project.
Now, what's this next step down from?
Recommended?
I'd probably put it in that bucket. I know we're not doing that tonight,
Okay.
but
All right, the roof Any issues on the roof?
Tell me about the guidance officer's leak.
Guidance office leak, I think we've got under control. We've had some, have you seen?
Well, okay, we're 10 inches drought, but I would be.
Right, I watch it during the heavy storms, and I keep an eye on that temporary drain I have, the catch I've got right now. And every time it rains heavier, we get heavy winds, I go and watch that, and I haven't seen any water coming from there. I also go up into the ceilings between, and I watch. Now, that's not to say we have another,
Right.
you know, a
Rain tomorrow,
heavy,
who
crazy
knows?
rain with a directional wind that's catches it right, that we couldn't have a problem. But every time we do, we get up there and we do additional repairs. So it's unfortunately the design of the building makes it tough to find exactly where that water comes in.
Yeah, so I think the roof is important. I mean, I think that like if I had my house and my roof and you had no insulation in the roof and stuff, like
I agree with important on that.
You want roof important?
Do we want to kind of make all the roof important, or are some of these kind of more important than others? Because some of these things we're saying they're okay, but it is a 35-year-old roof, like, you know, kind of.
I'd go with my feeling guidance office, I'd put important, because depending on what happens, that really is something that needs to be
it's
taken
just
care of.
consistently leaked and fixed and leaked and fixed over
Yes.
the 15 years we've had that
Right.
But
corridor.
then leave up the gym, which was work done last year, for instance.
Well, that's
for other
done. That's
categories. Yeah.
That's completed. That's a brand new roof over the
Yeah.
upper gym area.
Should we just take that off the list?
I would. It's,
Yeah.
Upper gym off?
and then cafeteria, kitchen, and machine shop, I'd probably raise to important,
Yeah.
just due to the thermal scans and the equipment that's up there. It's
Yeah, those things
There's
that
a
you
lot
showed
going
us
on
were
there.
pretty dramatic.
And then science labs, I'd probably put down to the next category, because that showed that roof is okay. It's just older.
Does that happen to be the oldest roof? Working, or still working roof?
I don't think it's the oldest. No, I think that's kind of falls right in the middle. But it's in good shape. I mean, it's holding up well. We did the thermal scan. We didn't find, major wet spots or leaks. Anything we found, we were able to repair.
All right, we're on to the page on the upper left. It says academic programs. The science classrooms. Oh, I'm sorry, those were critical last time. I'm sorry. We're going to drop
Studio
down
art
to-
room is the first thing that not.
To
isn't
art?
already-
and, the studio art room converted to interior classroom.
I think we had put the first one, I have important there.
Yeah,
I think we might have said that for the three art classrooms are small. And I think in the discussion last week, I marked it as important.
Yeah.
I actually have my
I
notes
see
as
it.
all of them in the art as important for my notes.
Yep, I would go with that.
okay.
We all good with that?
They're all important.
Okay.
All right.
Theater arts?
I mean, by the definition, recommended is affects some students but not all. It's impacting the students who take theater arts classes, so I don't know if that's all kids, but
Well, it's competition, it's
Right,
competing needs.
Does?
So it's from what it says here, all classes have to be scheduled in the auditorium, which receives heavy uses by other groups, including instrumental music, the play, and musical.
Are those groups,
Use of the stage negatively impacts their arts classes.
do all those various groups competing for that space, is that a significant portion of the student population?
it's a pretty decent portion of the student population.
It sounds like it has programmatic impact.
It does, but it's not as broad of a programmatic impact as some of the other things I'm
Okay,
gonna say.
okay.
So
Yeah, I think
I-
it sounds like it's a recommended maybe.
I wouldn't wanna,
Okay, waste and important on it.
yes,
Okay.
I don't mean,
Well, I want
I
to
don't mean
differentiate it. I mean, if
it's-
everything's important, nothing's important, so. I-
Right.
Yeah, all right, I get it.
Computer science and journalism. I guess.
So because this one is so tied into technology, you know, if we became a one-to-one school overnight, would this clear this up, Perry?
What's a one-to-one school?
Every kid has a school assigned device, like they've done in the 8th grade with Chromebooks.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's reaches the important level.
I would probably say recommended on that as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Wellness,
The first one we have is critical,
oh, yep.
and then the second one is health classes switch between 2 different academic classrooms.
I think that's important.
I would say that's important.
Okay.
That impacts eventually everybody in the building.
Okay, current academic programs, special education, the 2 learning center rooms becoming overcrowded?
Yeah, I think this is really, really important.
I agree.
Well, how do you make that important if the definition is that it, you know, kind of strikes a large population of the,
Because it does.
This is where I would fudge a little bit because the kids that we're impacting are a particularly important subgroup within the school.
And this would go to accreditation. I mean, this blurs into all sorts of other responsibilities.
That almost could go into the critical
Right.
column.
Yeah.
Because there are federal laws around
Right.
the ratios that you have to maintain between
Yeah.
student and staff.
Do you want to change that to critical then?
I would personally.
I think I probably would too.
Okay.
All right. The transition program,
Life skills, transitions. Recommended.
I would say recommended. Important group of kids, but they're not.
They're doing all right where they're at right now. It's not ideal, but it's working.
Yeah, I would agree.
you know, one of the issues we have, and there's no way to avoid it because you have to group this stuff in a certain way, but when you come to just lack of space, you know, if you're gonna deal with lack of space, you're gonna deal with lack of space. But you've gotta look at it a lot of different ways. The Academic Support Center. It's a small one in the back of the Media Center,
I would say recommended on that probably.
I would say recommended.
okay? ELL, which people on the school committee and in the administration know, but the rest of us are wondering what that means.
English language learners.
Okay.
Nice, you beat me to
The
it.
old ESR.
How did that, I didn't read the coordinated program review. What kind of a,
Well,
what did the coordinated program review say about the space, a lot of ELL?
it was too public, and so they put up curtains.
It's in the media center, you know, that back area.
No, I know it, but
central-
if you have,
They
It's okay.
don't mark it as the ELL room, make sure that there's privacy, mark it as you would any other classroom so it doesn't specifically designate which
right,
kids are in there. I mean, we're talking about 3 kids in the building who are
Yeah.
designated ELL, so it's a
Okay.
pretty, again, important population, but I would say recommended.
Recommended, I
And,
think.
I mean, it's an adequate space for what
Sure.
we're doing.
EMT,
I think that's important. Personally,
Does that,
they're keeping all their materials in the stairwell. Really, we can't get them a little bit of space. Doesn't drive a building project that can be overruled. I understand.
yeah, I guess,
I
yeah,
know.
I could see that as recommended, but I,
Okay.
you know,
Just wanted to put my finger.
all right.
I don't think we're doing it this way.
General purpose classrooms, we identified that as critical. Let me come back to the future academic programs. How many pages? What is that? All right, let me skip that and we'll go over to athletics.
Sort of important, sort of-
And a bunch of issues with the athletic administrator's office.
I think taken all together, it's like a low-level important.
Or a high-level recommender?
Feels like a high-level recommended, but I agree with you.
You know,
I'm bouncing
it's
between.
more than recommended, but I'm not sure that,
But
You
if
know,
we have to start differentiating
Okay.
on levels of importance,
Yeah,
it's-
it has to go
I'd like to
recommended.
see that fixed, but I can't claim it as important.
That's driving,
As
I mean, many
driving the
pieces of
project.
this don't have a direct impact on kids.
right.
Yeah,
So
Right.
if, for example, all the storage is used for, or solved, how much does that improve everything else that's going on in that room?
Quite a bit.
Like the trophies and the boxes
Yes.
and so forth, is that?
But
She
it's
had
sort
an
of-
Does that
additional
shift the
space,
rest a
if
little
there was
bit?
magically an additional space someplace else for a lot of that stuff, her office could just be an office. And she could have small private conferences and things like that that she can't do right now. So
But
yeah,
And
recommended.
yeah, I think in the grand scheme of things, it's not impacting
It's
a
not
bunch of
9 new
students.
classrooms, you know.
So,
So it could be later on, we're gonna meet up with storage and that might be thought of as important and it helps out this area.
Yeah.
Right?
all right, the training room, we've identified the first two issues there as critical. You know, personally, again, I was kind of shocked to see what I saw there, but it doesn't drive a building project. So I would probably put it down at recommended, or we could put it at recommended next time we go through this list. Okay.
I mean, the one thing, the physical therapy and rehabilitation done in hallway outside of lower gym and custodial area, that's a lot of kids.
Is it? Okay.
And I think there's safety and privacy concerns there.
I might call that one important because of the number of kids that are impacted by it and everything else on there recommended. Just my opinion.
so we definitely need more space, but
Specifically to address that rehabilitation issue.
so are we agreeing that
With
some of it we
employment,
were morphing a little
physical
bit, which
therapy
I'm
done
fine
all
with,
day, you're saying it's physical therapy.
for that important thing.
I don't know what
Technically, it
my
reads
employment
entire student
is.
body, and I think it's probably more appropriate to kind of a substantial portion of the student body, so that whether it's not every single student kind of gets, impacted, it seems a bit restrictive if it's across the across the entire student population.
I mean, I would say that, the number of kids who participate in sports at some point in their 4 years at the high school is a significant
Huge
number of
number.
kids. And so any kid who requires physical therapy or some sort of rehabilitation.
So I'm not arguing against that, I'm just saying maybe we want to kind of agree that the important definition maybe has morphed a little bit in that
Right,
it's a substantial.
maybe not every single kid, but a significant number of kids in the
Yeah.
building. As opposed to a select number of kids.
Because if someone
Right, or
looks at
like
this
this-
listing afterwards and it says every single student,
Right.
then people are gonna say, well, that's not every single student, that's not, like you kind of get into,
Right. A large number or kind of I mean, this is
Or an
sort
entire
of safety,
particular population.
privacy, yeah, like it rises a little higher. I don't think it's a
I don't know, a significant portion of the population.
Well, you know, part of the issue, on the other hand, part of the issue with using the hallways is the rest of the student body is using those hallways too.
No, yeah, I have no problem with being that important.
So it's not, in this case, it's not just the people undergoing or participating in the physical therapy that we're talking about, it's everyone else who's got to use that hallway too.
Yeah, it's also the loading docks, it's also,
Yeah,
I guess my
it's
comment is
areas
more,
of-
do we agree that we're
Not a good
changing
place.
the definition of important so that as we
That
move
important-
forward,
The
just
definition,
to show,
the definition is flexible.
well, not really, the way it's written,
I know, I wrote it.
yeah,
It's become flexible.
But
You
yes,
know.
we agree
yeah.
Yeah,
with what you're saying.
we don't just mean every single kid, we mean a substantial number.
Large
Substantial.
impact.
You know, so that if this kind of gets, whatever, shared with whomever, that we might want to clean that up so that someone's not
I'll
poking.
come back with a revised version
Yeah.
next
Excellent.
time. Okay, it'll say substantial. Next page, other indoor athletic space concerns.
I'd like to argue these are, I don't know if I need to argue it, but that these are important. I mean, there is a lot going on here when you go in this school, especially during indoor track time. You have whole teams of kids setting up hurdles in the hallway, running down the hall, jumping hurdles, coming around corners. Right now, if you go in, I was down in the auditorium lobby the other day, and they were doing CrossFit, I guess, for one of the teams. And part of the CrossFit program is they have a tractor tire, and they're hitting the tractor tire with sledgehammers, just as conditioning. But you miss with the sledgehammer onto a ceramic tile floor, and all bets are off. So, I mean, it's things like that the space is, it's important. If we're gonna do these kinds of programming, we need to really think about the proper
But it's
space.
also hallways shared by other students.
Oh, you literally got kids sprinting down the science hallway practicing indoor track.
I mean, I think
Jumping hurdles.
I mean, I think that's general population
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna give this all important?
That would be
It's
great.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay, got it.
thank you.
all right, locker rooms, the girls' locker room has insufficient number of lockers. By the way, I think the girls' locker room is
Make it
also
work.
poorly ventilated, right?
Yes, yes.
So the boys' locker room we said was critical. and-
Well, boys and girls locker room are poorly ventilated. I put
Oh,
both there. That's not,
okay, I'll add girls.
thank you. Yeah, that's both. And the number of lockers, probably look at rec.
Is that important?
Recommended.
I would say
Or what?
recommended.
Okay.
Recommended, okay.
Probably.
Okay. Storage?
Yeah, insufficient storage space for sports equipment, loading, shipping dock use for storage of large items.
Important.
Recommended.
You would drive a building project for that?
Yeah, recommended. I thought we were going with these storage
Well,
things. If EMT storage
Well, I'm-
is.
I would argue
I'm seeing
recommended
how
for that.
storage is everywhere in the building, and I think something about that is affecting everybody.
Yes, so it might be that there's a cumulative statement that says storage across, recommended in that it's not driving the building, but there's a cumulative effect that rises it to important.
So perhaps I would amend that paragraph to describe or enumerate
That's-
some of these areas and call them collectively
Right,
important.
yes.
Yeah.
So that might be something we do at the very end after we've categorized everything. We
Okay,
pull out some paragraphs that talk about the cumulative effect,
all right. So are we making this
recommended.
I'll
recommended?
put it in
Because
there.
otherwise we'd have to go back to EMTs.
At the bottom of the page, noise from weightlifting cage makes coaching basketball difficult.
Recommended.
Recommended.
Okay.
Though, to be honest with you, I think, doesn't that get addressed by the one up above it? No sound barrier absorber to block the sound of clashing metal affecting the ability to have effective gym classes.
Well, one is gym class
weight
and one is
training?
basketball, the sport
But
after.
functionally, the noise of the weightlifting,
Yeah.
so we've already got that as critical.
So do we want to delete noise from weightlifting cage makes coaching basketball difficult?
Or put it in the same box as the one above it, so that you have
Yeah, that's
both the
probably
during
right.
school and the after school.
That's a good
effects.
solution.
Okay.
Solution, Jim.
Got it.
All right, next page, athletics referees. Referees have to use the coach's office or the physical ed office. There's no coach's office,
Recommended,
okay.
or
Do you have
whatever
any
next one is.
transgender referee?
I don't, how, how is that a recommended if it has zero impact to the,
Yeah, what's
students?
below recommended?
What was the definition for
Desirable.
recommended?
recommended would be
That would be
areas that
recommended.
should be addressed into the benefit students are not spread across all students.
Yeah, so we'd have desirable for this one, I think, right?
Yeah, I think, I mean,
We'll do that.
So we're gonna
Okay.
do this at the end of the night, we're tired.
Visitors locker
Continue
room?
sharp,
Yes.
keeping us on track.
So the visitors locker room is just disgusting overall.
It-
It is disgusting.
Considered.
It's so small and it's poorly ventilated.
And it's overused.
It's overused.
Um, But again, here we get into space, Mark, right? You know,
Right,
storage.
Storage.
So,
But this has everything. This has ventilation issues. This has storage issues. This has, you know, smell issues.
Yeah.
You
And
can't
it's-
even
and
keep
it's-
paint down the wall in that
a
place.
it's a very
It impacts students,
heavily
just not our
utilized
students, I
space.
guess.
It's a
Well,
very
it does
heavily,
impact our
It is
students because it's a
constant.
storage area.
Yeah.
Ah, you have to.
So for example,
If you
was
need
the
stuff
soccer
in the team,
team-
you have to go
you
get
got
it. Is it for the
golf, you got
teams?
golf leaving their stuff in there, and the team's trying to change, and the visitors are coming in. It's
The
overutilized
hockey bags
space.
get put there, the
The hockey-
baseball
Oh, yeah.
bags, the football.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
where the teams store their,
So the
Bastards.
soccer team has to clean out the locker room if there's a Friday night football game at the show, kind of thing. So I think that makes important.
We want them all important.
Yeah, because if you're gonna solve one of those problems, you're gonna solve all of them.
So the previous time we saw storage, was that under recommended? Is that where we left it, or?
Yep. And we
So-
made a note that we're gonna make some sort of cumulative statement or
But
comment.
again, this is about the visitors' locker room. It's not about just the storage issue in the visitors' locker room.
Right, and we're not actually, that item doesn't actually address a lack of storage. It says it's being inappropriately used as storage.
So we're here to guidance, and I guess we're gonna bump up everything to critical that we missed last time.
Okay. We can do that.
That would make Jody happy.
So what we, the next one we have to address is no rooms for college interviewers.
That's recommended, I think.
Well, we had parents cannot enter guidance area without visibility to all students. We didn't
Oh.
classify that at all.
Honestly, I would call that more desirable even than
Okay.
recommended.
All right.
I mean, I think that there's,
Just take it.
there's plenty, I've been to plenty of other schools with what I thought were well-designed guidance areas. I think it's actually more important that we're connected with administration so that kids in crisis can transition between the two of us easier than parents coming, you know what I mean?
All right, career counselor is separated from guidance by hallway. That's gotta be desirable.
Yeah,
But what did we say about no room for college interviews? Did we classify that?
that's a recommended,
Yeah,
I think.
that's what I,
You
yes.
tell me.
Yeah.
Career counselor, go ahead.
That's desirable.
All right.
The next is desirable too. The next I would say is important. Where, in no office for use by providers of special counseling services.
Yeah,
When we have an outside counselor who's seeing kids within the building,
Mhm.
we gotta have space.
sure.
Yeah.
I think conference room is critical.
We have that.
UPS made to the front office. Storage
storage.
again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is administration.
So how do you want to classify?
I call it desirable.
All right.
Oh, no, not desirable.
Recommended.
Which one?
I don't know, I think the UPS deliveries are desirable.
Yeah, you
I wouldn't- I would-
desirable.
Kitchen space,
Desirable. In fact, I think
stationary closet,
desirable.
okay. No office for possible future dean of students.
Important,
Okay.
important,
All right.
Yeah, I think
and
that's lack of overall.
important,
no office for school resource officer.
important.
All right.
So the future dean, and I guess just so, you know, kind of the, that is a impact on a lot of the, well, I guess,
Yeah.
how does it tie back to I mean, the perspective for all this stuff is, how's it really impacting the students? I'm not saying from another perspective, it doesn't seem important for the person that would have that space.
I would go recommended for the office.
The dean office,
I-
go ahead, Julie.
I think that
Haven't changed
there's a
it
pretty
yet.
strong feeling amongst the faculty that we should have another administrator in the building, a dean of students.
Okay.
And obviously, they would be maybe catching a student doing something wrong and need to have a private space to have a conversation with them, and there's not any option for that now. If we were to be given a dean of students tomorrow, we don't have a place, we don't have an office.
Outside woodshed.
Yeah.
Take them
There
to
you
the
go.
woodshed.
I mean, already the SRO is in the bomb shelter. Oh, really?
So that space is taken.
So that space is taken.
So how do you want to classify it? Important? Harry?
I don't agree with important, but
Uh-oh.
Well,
We're in
I don't wanna
that
fight
state.
with
I guess
Jody,
at this point, we don't have a position, why is the space for a position we don't have important?
If you build
Because
it,
we need
They
it.
will come.
I mean, I still go back to kind of, is
We need it.
it impacting the, it's from the
there's
student
no current
perspective.
impact on anybody.
Yeah.
but if you've identified a need, if it's somewhere in your plan for the
It
school.
could be desirable,
So what's new?
but a need in whose perspective?
Jody's perspective.
But this is really a student
I mean,
perspective.
I-
is there
I
a need,
think
is there a
that-
need for an additional administrator? Absolutely.
Then you-
Then,
But
There you go.
is it currently having an impact on students that we don't have an office space for a hoped-for third administrator? No.
I mean, you gotta look at this as how the towns are gonna look at what we're saying is
Right.
critical and
Right.
Well,
it's
and
not, it's not the view of the,
We've got a whole
The
future
individual's
thing. I
impacted.
mean, that's,
Right. Yeah, I follow Dave's idea here, that gets recommended in my book.
I'll put recommended, but then I go home, I'll put it. Okay, well, did I say that out loud?
start that from the minutes.
Yeah.
I
I'm
put
not
recommend.
keeping that copious.
That's,
Okay, next page, meeting space.
Alright, so most of it is critical, and then the last one is sort of assistant offices are used as meeting space for student support space by the general population, so that's.
imagine if we had another office in there.
Have more
You guys
places
just wanna
than
make it be
needs.
recommended.
What's
I
your
think this
pleasure?
is important. I think that we have I think this is all very important.
Well, who's using, who's using this space? I mean, is this where the student council meets?
no, it's during the day. It's that we have an IEP meeting going on at the same time that the guidance department is meeting, and a student is frustrated and talking to an administrator, and there isn't enough space to accommodate all those different things.
so it doesn't sound like it's a significant portion of the population in general, but it impacts some of the population.
Yes, that's what I would say.
It's recommended then?
I would think it's recommended.
Okay.
How much is your administrative life
Okay.
impaired by having
Yes,
to be
Yes.
ejected from your office?
regularly.
It's not me being ejected from my office that's the problem. It's when we need to do something with a student and there's the meeting going on. I mean, I can go sit in the cafeteria and work on my laptop to check my email rather than doing it in my office. It's when we've got student situation and those spaces are having to be used by everybody because there's no other space.
There's not yet another one for whatever instance that another is needed.
Correct.
And what can be some consequences to that? When you need that one more.
It,
You can get two students who need to be separated from each other. It's difficult to keep them separated. Sometimes you're talking to one student and you don't want anybody else to know that you're talking to that student because you've got all this other stuff going on.
yes, these are when we need it, we really need it, and we don't have any other options.
Yeah.
Do we need it 3 times? Is it a 3 times a day kind of a thing? No. But is it frequent enough that it makes this list? And I will tell you, I do see it as an important need, and I think that additional, we talk about the cooling off, some of this stuff overlaps, right? The additional space.
I think the tough thing is our definition of the word important is it needs to be impacting a substantial number
Right.
of kids.
And I think you need to take
And
into
it's
account
not.
what David brought up before, which is that this list is for the review of people who have to vote on the project. And You know, the reason we didn't do an SOI a year ago is because, or the reason we voted against doing it is because the report that we had at that time was an administration's point of view. And I think you have to keep that in mind here. I understand this is, for the small number of kids involved in this, it's bad. And it's certainly a pain from the administrator's point of view, but
The taxpayers aren't gonna
the
care.
taxpayers, yeah, aren't gonna build the school
They don't care that I get kicked out of my
for
office.
the administrators. Yes, sorry, but
But it's understandable from the faculty staff that it's frustrating and it's
Yeah.
important to you.
I just don't want to diminish it when we look at the things that are important that impact the school day and the school week. You know, no, it's not a single point driver.
well,
And put it in as recommended. I hear what you're saying.
you know,
Just-
I can't guarantee what's gonna happen after this committee ceases to meet. But there's a building committee that's gonna, you know, these things will inform the building committee's decisions, but they're not obligated to agree with them or to follow them. And so this isn't the final word on the subject. Okay, food services, limited cafeteria seating, drives 4 lunch periods of 22 minutes each.
Important, impacts every kid in the building.
Just out of curiosity, do we want to, and I had notes in here that related to food services, we talked last time as a critical item, which wasn't on our list, a quiet lunchroom.
Let me see, food services,
So it wasn't on the list. We kind of said we need to add this, and we voted on it, and we
Okay.
said
you want to
adding
add
a
that?
quiet.
Need for quiet lunchroom, correct?
Quiet space.
Separate, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the need for that? Just, what's it?
You have under food services and/or kids who need a quiet space under critical.
Oh.
Would that
Oh,
Oh, we do.
capture it?
Okay, no,
The bottom of
Oh, I
the second
see,
to last
I see.
page.
Oh,
we'll take
there
it
it
out.
is.
Got it, got
I
it.
take
Yep,
it.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
there you go.
Okay,
I didn't get the last part of the sentence.
yep, got it.
Okay, next page is school psychologist.
I think it's probably desirable.
Okay. Both items?
With the office adjourns computer, there's getting more between two. Yes, I would say desirable on that.
Okay, and speech pathologist, which I obviously need.
I think that actually is recommended because that has a direct impact on students.
Okay.
What did you, that was a recommended? Or?
The speech pathologist recommended, yes, because she's providing services to kids in that space.
Does it turn out to be a noisy space because of servers, lots of fans and
No, it's not a noisy space, it's a very tight, cramped space.
hot perhaps?
I had 2 additional notes from the last meeting, and I don't have a vote for this one, but it mentioned needing an IEP 504 conference room. But I don't have any kind of vote, but it wasn't one of the categories that we
Okay.
looked at. And the other one was adding a general storage comment line item that, you know, the cumulative effect
Yeah.
of the storage room.
What's IEP 504 conference room? What is?
Right. In terms of the way that we end up using your office or somebody's office to have 504 meetings.
Oh, so,
Like, we need a
Yeah.
conference room to hold those.
yeah, need for another conference room.
Did you want to add that someplace?
That would be under administration, wouldn't it?
Well,
Or
there's-
guidance?
Well, meeting space,
When we have no conference room and guidance office is critical.
right? There needs to be a
That
meeting
would-
space for IEPs and 504 plans?
Right, I think that kind of rolls up again, like we roll up storage, we roll up
Meeting space.
meeting space.
Yep.
Well,
We could do that as a.
We identify for administration, we say one conference room seats 8 people maximum.
should that go under special education?
No.
No?
Meeting space then?
Really?
I'm asking.
It's kind of a shared, it's sort of shared between guidance, special ed. We held teacher meetings there.
Okay.
We hold 504
Well,
meetings.
Pick where you want to add it.
It's
I'm
a-
putting it under meeting space.
Okay.
And it could also double as the college, you know, where the college reps meet. We have multiple uses for it.
Oh, yeah, under meeting space, we've got only one functioning conference room in the building.
Right. So I think that we're not saying we need a separate one, but we could.
You're saying it's important or recommended.
Yeah.
Which one?
Important.
Harry, important or recommended meeting space for IEP and 504 meetings.
Would we designate the other one?
Well,
We got some that are critical.
how is that different from only one functioning conference room in the building, and it can only comfortably accommodate up to about 10 people?
It's for a specific purpose. You're saying that, yeah, you only have one conference room, but you need a conference room for parent meetings, testing.
I mean, I would
It's
say,
really that you just
Have it in one place
collaboration.
or the other is okay with me.
say again?
You have it in one place or the other.
So does it need to be a separate line item, or is
Correct.
it just
Maybe not.
globally kind of
Yeah.
rolled in?
Do you want it separate or do you want it just rolled in?
I have no opinion.
Jody? Separate or rolled in?
I think it can be rolled in. I think
All
that
right.
saying that we only have one doesn't designate. And this is again, I think ultimately gonna have to be rolled up for people to understand impact of various things that we talk about, so.
So, and then how about the whole overall general storage
Yep.
issue? What is that?
Storage and meeting
The
space.
cumulative effect of.
I think that's important because, I mean, you've
Yeah.
just got so many things just all over the place that impacts kids' ability
might be
to
a-
move safely and.
The roll-ups are sort of the cumulative storage space, sort of the cumulative administrative meeting space.
When we build a new high school, we'll save the old high school for meeting space and storage.
They
Great
just
idea.
fit.
We should have brought those.
It is true that the MSBA does not particularly fund storage, so this will be 100% kind of thing, where if you really want it and need it, you'll have to commit to
There's,
having it.
yeah, there's undefined space in an MSBA floor plan anyway. Let's go back to the future academic programs, which I think was the fourth page in. Or am I wrong?
I think it's not
Yeah,
counted,
third page.
but it's just part of the need.
Yeah, it's
But
fourth
again, I
page,
think that.
fourth page from the front.
Yeah.
So these are our future academic programs.
Can I make a recommendation on language under specialized science where it says impact, it says cannot offer courses such as entomology, forensic, we are offering those courses.
Then, all right, that was part of what I transferred from the summary. So what do you want it to say?
Maybe, I don't know, difficult to offer,
Okay.
challenging to offer.
Difficult. All right.
So and I think that anything that has to do with classroom utilization is important, right? Didn't we, and it's the cumulative effect of cumulatively, we need 9 new classrooms and 1 science lab, right?
Which one are you on?
Well, I'm looking at science, we talked about specialized science, limited lab space, and the next one is curriculum support, high utilization rate. And the next one is business, and we don't have, you know, retail space for a student store or classroom for more business classes.
I would rate these as important because of the implications for programming
I agree with you.
and kids
All right,
who take the programs.
so that's the first three?
I would say
On that page.
everything under future, this is what you're looking at, unless there's, you know,
Well, I'm just trying to reconcile the theater arts future with the theater arts current.
Okay.
But, yeah,
So we might be redundant there a little bit.
The other thing is kind of, when you, kind of not to,
This all comes under space.
well, it's not only space, it's just the overall, what portion of the student population that are you impacting?
Well, you might be limited due to space, in scheduling the space, because if everyone needs the auditorium, or if there are 3 or 4 classes that need the auditorium, it impacts how you can schedule, and that would impact his ability to take this particular course.
Right.
But there's probably less people taking theater than taking science.
I think I want to just change the way this is presented here,
Okay.
where you've got future that goes from top to bottom of the page. For priority, I think you should take away the different rows in there. I would leave your specialized science curriculum support,
Okay.
but I would group them all together. Because these things are not necessarily separate. For example, curriculum support and business, there's a lot of overlap there, and same with technology.
But I think that when we were talking about this, and when we were looking at the information in the summary, it's the idea that these are things that you want to be able to have and develop fully with an eye towards what kids are going to need in the future. I don't understand how we would group these all together and have the same impact as if we looked at them as separate offerings, curricula.
Like, couldn't you think some of them are more important than others if you're gonna like rank order some of these future issues?
I'm not, I think that would be for people at the high school to do.
Well, we're kind of doing that through this
Yeah.
whole,
We are kind of doing that.
And I see it not so much as future, but as curriculum. You know, like in journalism, you know, these things require staging and cameras, large increase in journalism. We're now running 4 sections of it.
But you do those things currently.
Not all of it that's in here.
How about if I propose that I talk to Jody and Perry and Kathy and see if we can't come up with a different way of either explaining this better or presenting it in a different way,
All
because
right.
it's getting late,
It sure is.
Yes.
all right?
I have a very minor editorial comment. There's the word exponentially under business. Can we just say some double or triple or whatever, but not exponentially?
Yep.
Whatever the
And that makes
appropriate
sense to look
description
through all
is.
of this. Some of this is stuff that we put together 2 years ago. I mean,
Yeah,
and
and
that was just.
Yeah, it's
So
just a cut and paste from
Yeah.
all of that.
So I do think it makes sense, Bob, when we meet to look at cleaning some of this stuff up and
Okay.
where are we redundant that we should combine things and not take out any content, but clean it up a little bit.
Okay.
What's wrong with that? Indulge me for 2 minutes. When I go back to town and my colleagues say, how's it going with the space study committee? What, if you were a betting man, what do you think is gonna come out of this down the road? Well, looking at, we need more space. You're not saying reallocate space, we said we need more space. You can't, it's like you can't create matter, you can't create space within those walls. How do I say the only thing that I can conclude somewhere down the line is somebody's gonna be proposing a new high school?
addition.
Or addition or major
Yeah.
renovation.
Didn't we just early on talk about the only way you could do it is in the center of that school and build up, in which case you'd have to move everybody out for years?
I think there's other options.
There's
that they
other
could-
options in terms of putting
Okay,
some
I-
structures there.
I'd like, at some point, give me some arguments, because I know I'm gonna get that question. Oh, you're involved in this, we're gonna get a new school out of this, and so at least I can say, well, for the following reasons, maybe.
Well,
I think that's part of the SOI process.
yeah,
to
I can
determine
only,
that.
I can only, you know,
And that's my issue of ceding authority to MSBA.
Right.
When they start
So-
looking at stuff and, oh, okay, once we get past a certain number of check boxes, the best solution is a new school.
see, let me take a couple of, let me exaggerate things just for purposes of illustration, okay? Let's say science labs. We gotta do something with the science labs. And personally, I think it'd be cheaper to build new science labs than to renovate what we have. And let's say that that's, now, there's different places you could put them. So I don't think you have to tear something down to add science labs. However, if you want to improve the cafeteria, I don't know how you do that without changing a structural wall. If you're going to change a structural wall, I think you're going to have a challenge from an engineering firm or an architect about how your footings are. Is that a fair statement?
I would think so.
In which case, you got to dig down into the ground. In that case, does renovation make sense? I don't know anymore. And that's the kind of reason I don't think this group can make a recommendation about what should be done.
I'm not asking that, I'm not.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is that there are, it depends on the extent of what's really important to you. Is it really important to solve the cafeteria problem? Then you've got a big construction project. You've got a really big construction project on your hand. One that I think is bigger than adding science labs, because you've got to demolish some of your interior walls and replace the footings. And you're at that point, you're also inside the, 180-foot perimeter of the well?
Yes.
So, you've got environmental protection breathing down your neck, looking over your shoulder, I should say. So, and frankly, until 4 or 5 months ago, I was sure that we would have higher enrollment. Now I'm not so sure. When I see what's happened to Concord, Carlisle, and North Middlesex, if we aren't going to have continued increase, if our enrollment's actually going to shrink in the next 15 years, it completely changes the complexion of what to do with that school, to me personally. And I can't answer that question right now. And frankly, even after we get this enrollment report, MSBA has their own way of coming up with enrollment projections, right? We're touching all the bases with our own enrollment report, because we want to be able to explain everything to the taxpayers when it comes time to do that.
We can come up with an entirely different rationale based on our enrollment study than MSBA. We don't care what you did, this is what the book says.
Right, we're going to take into account things that they don't care about, is probably what's going to happen.
But we could also provide to MSBA all the material and
Right.
the information that we've identified. And I would agree that you can't create space from nothing. And if you have a lack of square footage in the building, you have to add square footage in the building to kind of add square footage to the building.
I think
you know.
I think we need to add to the overall square footage of the building, just even if we have a steady population, in order to enhance the range of classes we offer.
So then it's gonna come down to the extent of that addition versus building a new school.
Yeah, I personally, you know, I'll be kicking and screaming before I do a new school. I'll be kicking and screaming.
A lot of taxpayers would too.
Yeah, I know.
Right along with you.
I know. I'm not
Rockets,
there.
Chorus line.
I don't think MSBA would have to cram that down my throat.
Okay.
But because I just don't see that kind of, you know, the two schools that did build, Concord Carlisle and North Middlesex, they were in danger of losing their accreditation from NEASC because of building conditions. We're not anywhere near that. there's relatively little in the NEASC report about building conditions. So we're not anywhere near being in trouble. 10 years from now, when they come back, if we did nothing, then we might be in trouble. But we're not in trouble right now. So I don't think we're in a dramatic situation like North Middlesex and Concord Carlisle are.
No, and North Middlesex let it sit for like 12 years. I mean, they went through 2 NEASC.
Yeah, and Concord Carlisle, they had issues on their building committee. They came up with several proposals that got shot down before NEASC forced them to finally make a decision.
We've been fly specking, we folks have. I think it's important whenever you get before the school committee to give some kind of the satellite view as well as the fly spec view. And just for the benefit of, that makes sense to me, what you're saying.
Okay.
And I think it'd be helpful for the public to start thinking, it isn't just simply because you total up the square footage, it automatically is gonna mean a new school. Keep an open mind for aardvarks like me,
No, that,
and
it's,
let the process play out
yeah,
before you.
there's a whole bunch of, yeah.
But I think we gave some specifics of like adding classrooms or the science labs and how many science labs. So there's some meat to that of this is where the need is and it's adding stuff. Well,
Somebody's gonna ask the question, out of all of this stuff, between critical and important, how many 1,000 square feet are you gonna need? Has anybody thought of it in those terms? Or is that
Well,
what
we
it
had
is?
to
We
Yeah.
have to a certain extent when we've talked about how many classrooms do
Yeah.
we need, and there's a square footage attached to that. But I mean, I agree with you too. I mean, okay, you add 6 more trailers and you've addressed general classroom need, you haven't figured out the science classroom need, but that doesn't solve a lot of the other critical
Right.
problems that we've addressed. And if you spend $10, $12 million to do this, and then assume that you're not gonna spend any more money for 30 years, is that viable as well?
Yeah. And
We did that before.
some of the issues with the high school are architectural. Putting those science labs on with a small hallway connecting them, I don't get that. I don't get that at all. And there's other things I look at, like the fact that most schools now have flat roofs. Ours has peaked roofs. So anytime you do anything anywhere, I've got to figure out where the water's going to go.
This goes to guidance, we know that.
I think that could be it. We could
All
just have an
water's flowing
interior.
guidance.
We could have an interior waterfall in guidance. This
know what?
is it.
It would be
an architectural
calming, it would
feature.
be soothing.
Put some little pebbles.
Yeah,
We've talked about that.
Some
Yeah.
music in
It'd
the
be right into the
background.
DVT stills, yeah,
that would be great. So,
9:30 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Well, thank you for the.
I'm ready to go.
Okay.
I appreciate you taking the time.
All right. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good holiday.
Look at your